Welcome back to the channel, my fellow Little Lamplighters. This is the place where we explore the worlds of illustration and storytelling. Today, I'm incredibly excited to bring you a very special guest, an artist whose work feels like stepping into a beautifully illustrated book. I'm talking about none other than Chris Dunn. Chris is known for his richly detailed, whimsical watercolors that evoke the charm of classic children's literature. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and enjoy this deep dive with one of the most inspiring illustrators working today. And please forgive me because I didn't record his charm welcome, so I started recording directly the first question, which I'm gonna ask right now. Chris, were you always drawing as a kid?
What was I always drawing? Oh gosh. Well, actually, I spent quite a lot of time drawing stickmen. I used to do tons of stickmen, and it was all because I'd watched. I must have been like 6 or 7 or something, and I'd watched the film Zulu, and all the Zulu warriors line up along the horizon, and so I was like, "Oh, that looks amazing!" So then I was doing all these little stickmen with spears and shields and stuff. But when I actually tried to then draw some proper stuff, I was doing copies of Redwall book covers.
Oh.
So Redwall started coming out when I was born. I think it was like 86 or something. And then in the 90s, it was like a really big thing. And so they were kind of like the first books that I read properly, that I picked as a child. And it was because of the book covers. Because they had these really cool animals on them that were all dressed in armor or fighting or whatever they were doing. And I was like, oh, that's really good. So I think I drew a Badger Lord. I can't remember his name now, which is quite bad, in Salamander Strong, and he had a spear and he had this golden armor. And I know that the covers are different depending on which country you're in as well. So since I've been doing Redwall book covers myself, which I should show you, seeing as we're talking about it, if I can find it.
Yeah.
So this is the Salamander Strong that I painted.
Okay. Wow.
So it's the same characters, obviously, but it was actually closer to the description in the book, which was funny because when I remember reading it as a kid and looking at the image afterwards, which is what I kept on doing, and I was going, well, why has he got golden armor? I don't remember him having golden armor, and I couldn't find reference to it. And there were a few other things in there as well that didn't really make sense. The description of this is like a volcano that is extinct now. It's used as a fortress, whereas in the book cover that I saw as a kid, it was like this really jagged, pointy rock.
Yeah. Okay.
And volcanoes tend to be quite flat at the top, generally. So yeah, that was more in keeping with the description and also the illustration that's in the map inside the book. So I was like, right, well, that's going in anyway. I'm not doing the maps and everything, so that's going to be inside the book. So therefore, I'll make it look similar to that version rather than the other artist who did it. Oh, I don't know his name. And so that was really cool because obviously I was going back and illustrating something. You know about this?
Yeah.
That you read as a kid.
Yeah.
And I was able to see it in two minds. I was seeing it as an adult and I was seeing it as a child. I was remembering what I used to see back then and how I used to feel about the stories and the world and the environment. And it was it's initially everything happens in a wood. And so it feels very, very sort of English, British, however you want to say, Northern European, it's got that feel about it. And then they move a bit further afield and the environments change. But it always starts around that kind of lush green kind of environment, which is like, absolute dream for me. So I use that as a basis for the main area. But then the book covers themselves, there's 22 book covers, and they have different characters from different parts of this world. And so what I wanted to do what was really important to me was that every book cover had to be slightly different. either in color palette or composition or the action that's taking place. You know, it's not all fighting, it's not all posing with weapons. Sometimes it's people climbing rope ladders or running through woods and things. And the idea was that you could then line the books up on a shelf and you would spot the story before even having to read the title. If you'd read every book, you'd be, oh yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Which is, I prefer that to the books. There's loads of covers now that come out that are basically the same cover, just with a slight change. So it's the same design and it's just like a slightly different colour on each one. And you just get completely lost.
Yes.
You don't know if you read the first one, the second one, the third one in the series. I really don't like that. I like it where it is very different. And then then as a kid, you have your favourites.
Yes.
And you recognise it straight away. So the original Harry Potter.
The Harry Potter was
really good at that. Yeah, yes. They were good. Because they were all, and they changed, I think, didn't they, with the illustrators?
Yes, each time
the first one was very different to the second one, and that was really nice. And I think they changed the banner that the text was on as well, didn't they? The colour,
yes,
based on what was in the illustration. So it all kind of worked together. I really like that, so that's what I was going for anyway. But I think with the publisher who did this, they always had across the top Redwall, and it had to be red. So, you know, yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of clashing of colours going on when the red text goes across the top. But I've got another example here of the other one. And you can see the difference in the colour palette and the environment and the composition as well. But even though it's set on the coast, you know, in the same kind of environment, it's a different time of day. It's a different sort of weather. The colour palette is much more muted and grey.
Yeah.
That's deliberate.
Do you spend or have you spent long periods of time sketching or taking notes, like color keys outdoors, taking your watercolors and making studies of different moments of the day and those sort of things? Or
so, in an ideal world, yeah. I used to do a little bit of that before I had kids. And then once I had kids, I realised I didn't have the time. If there was any spare time, it was to do with them and what they wanted to do, because I spent so much time, I still do, I spend so much time in the studio that I feel a bit guilty if I'm then like, yeah, let's go out, and I'm taking my sketchbook.
Yes.
You know, I'm not engaged with them. So
yeah, of course.
I balance it, but what I do is, especially if I'm going somewhere where I know I'm going to probably find some interesting reference, I take my decent camera, so, SLR, DSLR, and I go around and take tons of photographs, and my kids just happen to be in them. But really, it's because of this lovely rock down here that's got the sea rock pools in it and everything, and they're kind of, on the top right of the photograph, and the rest of it is all, that's kind of what it's like. My wife takes tons of photos of them at the same time, so I don't feel too guilty. There's still plenty of record of them as well. But this is a perfect example because it was Bamborough Castle in Northumberland or Northumbria, whichever one it is now, and it's got a fantastic beach that goes across the front of it. So the castle itself is on a great big rock that looks like it could have been a volcano. It scoops right down across some sandy dunes and through these rocks, these really dark rocks, and to the beach and the sea. And I was looking at this and I was like, there's so many things in here that I could use over the years. And sure enough, I've gone back to it time and time again. And I don't think, the one thing that really lifts this is the reflections in the sand. So sort of this really wet sand with incredibly shallow bits of salt water just rolling across it and rolling back again over here. And then obviously down here. That is direct from the reference that I took. and I probably wouldn't have been able to have painted that anywhere near the level that I managed there if I didn't have that reference and I wasn't inspired by it. And it's the same with the sky as well. You know, that sky is from another sort of, I think it was Whitby, it was overcast, you know, and it's just picking out the colours and the way that the light kind of breaks through here, but keeping it very soft at the same time. So it's not stark and it doesn't come forward too much. And it makes sure that the sort of the strongest highlight, the hardest edge, is in the foreground on these characters here. And that's all the reference, you know. So sketching and painting in situ, plein air, would be lovely, and it's something I plan to do when my kids are grown up. But, you know, at the moment, it's very much, I just have my camera with me, and I'll just write a little note down on my phone, or if I've got a little pad, which I sometimes have, I'll write something down just as more like a colour reminder than anything. Because obviously when you're taking photographs, the colours in the photographs are not how they are in life, or not at least how I see them, and you'll see them differently to me. And it's mainly skies. You know, it's the colours in the sky that the camera just really struggles with because of, you know, the light and the contrast that it has to deal with its exposures. So that is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
And then when I go back, you see, then when I get back in the studio and I'm looking at these photographs, it's a case of, oh yeah, but because I've got these notes, I can go, well, actually, I know what's behind that area that is overexposed and you can't really see any colour, or it looks too, quite often the blues, they get too warm and they become like this sort of violet colour, especially with bluebells and things like that. Then I know, actually, no, I need it, because I'll write a note, you know, this would need Prussian blue, this would need cobalt blue instead of, you know. So that way I've got that kind of mental version of a painting that I did in my head when I was there. But obviously it doesn't take anywhere near as long to do as it would if I just sat down and started painting it. Yes. And I have done that in the past, and it's been really tough because obviously the light changes. And so the way that you see something, even if you've painted the thing out, and then when you get home and you look at it again as like a little study, you go, that's not right. In this light, it's completely different again. So it's all a mixture, I think. In a perfect world, it'd be sketches, painting, little notes, photographs, all bringing it back into the studio and then spending time to put it all together. I think that is probably the perfect situation. But at the moment, it's not. Sometimes I'll sketch. If I'm really lucky, I will sketch something very quickly. But most of the time it is just photographs, and then working from notes that I've taken alongside.
And another question, when I see your illustrations in general, one thing that I love about them, and everybody does, is that they are very cinematic. So my question is, like, do you watch a lot of cinema or not?
Yeah, I mean, how could it not? I think really, you know, I think everybody, any kind of artist, is constantly inspired by any kind of visual, aren't they? And you see things, you see posters, you see films, you see album artwork when there used to be album artwork and things like that. And it all kind of goes into the mixing pot. And yeah, there are certain films, aren't there, that are particularly good at creating an atmosphere. And the one that springs to mind, well, there's two that spring to mind. There's like the really dark one in Alien.
Yes.
I remember watching that when I was far too young and I shouldn't have been watching it. But I was like the artist Giger and his work, his sort of kind of conceptual work for that was so incredible. And I remember finding a book that was mainly just his work for Alien. And that was at school. That was when I was doing GCSE, just before maybe. So it would have been like 14, I reckon. And going through that, I mean, it was so atmospheric, incredibly creepy. but it created this atmosphere, and it was all about how he used chiaroscuro, how he used the colour palette. It was incredibly muted. And the character design was incredible, but it really was the atmosphere that really sort of caught me. And then there's other things that I've seen when I was younger that are more kind of, I suppose, English. Obviously, I saw the Wind in the Willows, David Jason doing the voiceover of the stop motion animation that was like absolutely amazing, and that's stayed with me. I really like Ridley Scott. I think he's great at creating atmosphere. So you got Alien, and then you got Gladiator, and Gladiator is one of those that is the color palette that's used, the way it's color graded for different emotions is so clever. And that was when I really sort of noticed it. You know, I noticed it was going on, which is probably not the best thing because you're not supposed to notice it, are you? But you do. Like when he's at the beginning of the film and it's really quite grey because they're going to start fighting and it's in a wood and it's very somber and dark. And then when he gets to Rome, it all kind of suddenly becomes very yellow and very kind of bright, but it's still somber. And I don't know how he does it, but I know it was a lot of the inspiration for the visuals was based on a Jerome artwork of gladiators. There's a really famous one of Jerome with a fight inside the Colosseum with a gladiator there, and I think they're all. I can't remember which way it was. Thumbs up, wasn't it, for dispatching somebody, and thumbs down for letting them survive, I think. And we all do it the other way around now. But it's all that kind of thing, film-wise, that you notice. And I don't watch that many films now, I've got to say. But when I was a kid, I did watch a lot of. There's a heck of a lot of old films that I watched that happened to be on TV around about 12 o'clock. And I just end up watching these films from the 50s and the 60s. Genevieve is another one. And the colours, there's something about her. Yeah, there was the atmosphere. I remember the Lady Killers, the original Lady Killers film. And there's the scene looking down at, is it St Pancras or King's Cross? I can't remember which station it is. And it wasn't staged or anything. It really was. London looked like that. And it was just after the Second World War. And so you've got these steam engines coming in and out. And it's bright sunlight, but because it's so sooty and polluted, it's got this really weird light going on. And it looks amazing. It looks absolutely incredible. And I think that all of that kind of stays with me. And I end up using it in other things. So when I'm doing Wind in the Willows, especially, you know, there are certain images that I've done which have got steam engines in. So I try to evoke that kind of sooty, misty, not quite misty, but quite grimy atmosphere that is permanently there, basically. You know, it's in the walls, it's everywhere. And then when it's further out and you're on the river or you're into the woods or the fields, then I'm thinking more, obviously, clean air, bright sunshine or atmospheric light maybe coming in at an angle. And again, that is all things that I've seen in animations and films that I've watched as a kid, and occasionally I'll see things now that I'll be like, oh yeah, that's really good. And obviously anything that is Lord of the Rings that was done by Peter Jackson, you know, the way that, again, he creates a very soft kind of English colour graded feel at the beginning with the Shire, and then it gradually all kind of falls apart and gets much darker. But it changes all the way along. And so I'm always thinking along those lines with film. But then, like I say, you see other art on different things in books, calendars, whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, I'd like to have a go at that. And as a child, you don't feel too bad about just kind of copying it.
Yes.
You know? And working out how it's done. And the best thing about that is that it never changes. It's not like when you're outside painting something and the light changes and it's all gone and it's all the shadows have changed. when you're copying something that's a static image, it doesn't change, and you can literally hold it right next to what you're doing and be like, oh yeah, that's no good.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as a child, you'd be like, what's the point? I'm rubbish at this.
Yeah.
I'll just stick to the pencil and just draw.
Yes.
And eventually the painting thing will come along.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a pretty long-winded answer, but that, yeah, I think it's everything that you see. It's not just the films. And again, just wandering around, visiting places, taking photographs. Occasionally things will, just an atmosphere of the way the light hits something, hits a tree, dappled light maybe. Quite often it'll stay with me. And if it stays with me, then I know that's something that's worth going back to and see if I can create a painting that interprets what I've seen and puts it down. If I'm really lucky, I get to do that. Sometimes, obviously, you know, it's literally, we need a picture that does this and that. But every now and then it'll be like, oh, I know what reference I could use for that. And then I'll dig it out and stick it in. So yeah, there you go.
And what about your love for animals? I mean, is your favorite thing to draw and paint animals? Is your style something that you always loved, or is something that naturally, like, people started asking you to do it and then you became very good at it?
I'm not what you'd say like a full-on animal lover. I don't have pets. I like wildlife. I really love wildlife, but I don't have a dog or a cat or anything. I did grow up with a dog, but she was next door, and that was my grandma's dog. So we didn't even have a proper pet in our house when I was growing up. But I think what's happened is that a lot of the artwork that I loved right from the very beginning, so Beatrix Potter and then into Redwall as well as a child, was all animal characters. And I ended up doing that later on if I share some work.
Yes, please.
Oh, hang on. It's not turned on. Oh no.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Let me allow. That's it. Now you can do it.
Okay. Right. So let's get out of this one, and I can show you right back towards the beginning, pretty much. This one.
Oh yeah.
So when I just started, really, I started in 2009, and I started doing work like this, which was very much kind of driven along the lines of what the magazine wanted. So I was doing loads of magazine work, articles about business and management, and it was incredibly dull. And they would say exactly what they wanted, and even the style that they wanted it in. Occasionally I'd get to do something that was a bit more me, in terms of using watercolor, but most of the time it was portraits of columnists and kind of weird things like this. And I became known as the guy that could do different styles for like a third of the price. And it was literally, the art director would say, we want to employ this artist, and he showed me the artwork, but we can't afford him. Can you do something similar? And it'd be like, well, yeah, I can, but it's not great. It's not what I want to do. And when I had a lot more spare time, I used to do what I wanted to do. And this is one of the pieces, and this is probably the first one that I did as an adult, I think, that had an animal character in. This is back in 2011.
Oh,
and it was a homage to Brian Jakes, who wrote the Redwall series, and he died that year.
Oh.
And I saw it as a way to kind of mark his passing, but also take advantage of the fact that I could do something that was what I wanted to do, that style that I liked, with those characters and that atmosphere that I liked, without it being just another children's book sample, as it were. Just something random. It was very much kind of like, this is quite important to me, marking like at the end of my, I suppose, childhood, really, in a lot of ways, seeing as he died, and he'd been writing all the way up until he eventually died. So there's a lot of books, and yeah, it was this animal character as one of his characters almost as if he was one of his characters in his book. And it's kind of him at his writing desk, and it's the winter, so, coming towards the end of the year, the end of his life. And it got picked up. Other people saw it. Galerie saw it. Later on, publishers saw it as well. And I think it was just one of those where people were like, yeah, can we have more of this? And as an illustrator, you just do whatever works, and I was just really lucky that it was that style that meant that I got other jobs in that style, and it was because it was something that I liked doing. And I also reckon that watercolor in a lot of ways is really good at animals. It's just one of those mediums that works really well with fur. Okay. I think it's because you can layer so many transparent layers over the top, but it still feels quite luminescent. It's got a light touch to it. And of course, hair is semi-transparent anyway, especially the lighter the colour, the more transparent it gets, right down to whiskers, which are completely transparent.
Yes.
And I think that's a lot to do with it, because when you do humans, skin is a little bit transparent, but it reflects a lot of light back, and it's much harder to paint. You have to use more opaque colours and gouache and things like that to try and get something that has that same kind of depth of colour.
Yes.
And so, I just think it all just kind of fell into place, really. And so I ended up being commissioned to do work like this, work that was all animal inspired, set around a similar kind of time period to The Wind in the Willows Edwardian, with animals in this kind of animal human world, where the animals were like 3, 4 times, 5 times, maybe 10 times the size as they should be in real life, so that they could interact in the human world. And then, I just ended up with a great big portfolio of work that was all this kind of anthropomorphic animal, whimsical stuff.
Yeah.
And as soon as you've got that, then it's just, people want more of it. There's so many stories knocking around that are classic stories that have animal characters in, and there's so many new stories. I mean, this was like a personal piece for a gallery, but it's then being used as a book cover for a book that came out in Australia, a few years later, because it just happened to fit, and it's weird how that happens, but it quite often things will come along where I've painted a picture and somebody says, "Oh, I wrote a story that's very similar to that," and it just kind of slots together. People think about children's books, especially animal characters. It's everywhere.
Yeah, we love that.
So it's a never-ending or a bottomless well of inspiration, really, because I can paint anything I want. I really can paint anything I want, and all I have to do is have a little animal character in there somewhere. And I'm sort of I'm really inspired. As you can probably tell, I'm really inspired by the natural world and the way light hits different objects and grass and trees. And this is an excuse to paint these hedges and this church and this type of light as a book illustration for The Wind in the Willows. So I'd illustrated the book with Corette, and I'd done things like this, and this as well, and these are all local places. This is West Woods, which is just a few miles down the road. This incredible beech wood, and it's just kind of bits and pieces that I've put together to create that scene. And then this is a place called Avebury Manor, which is a very famous stone circle that goes. The village is inside the stone circle. The stone circle's that big. Ooh. And this great manor, it was just kind of perfect for the description of Toad Hall. It's all these different time periods and different types of architecture that are kind of put together, over the years. and it's a bit ramshackle, but it's quite grand as well. And it was an excuse to paint this scene with the way that the light hits these creepers, and the kind of the contrast between the warm and the cool. It's not quite a cool shadow. It's quite a warm shadow, even though it's blue. It's still got some warmth to it. And then the reflected light in the archway. Yeah, it's all kind of an excuse to paint that.
Yes.
And then I can pop the characters in, and it becomes an illustration for the book, and it's exactly the same.
It's funny. Sorry, it's funny that if I'm painting, if I was you, I will be like super excited about doing the characters, and then, well, okay, I have to do a background, so I'm gonna paint the background.
Yeah,
Whereas it's funny to discover someone who is like kind of having fun with the background, and then it's like, okay, I'm gonna put the characters.
I know it's kind of like a backwards way of working, really. And I shouldn't be, as an illustrator, you should be concentrating more on the characters. But I've never really done that ever.
You're like, do you know Nathan Folks? Are you familiar with him by any chance?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I remember his background. I mean, the way he used color and light is wonderful. And I remember him like working watching an interview, and he says how when he started working at DreamWorks and this sort of thing is like they will ask him like, and where are the characters? Because it was all we need a character. It was like, well, okay, and then he started drawing the characters, but for him it was just environment.
It's the world building. It's creating that atmosphere and that environment. It's just so exciting, and I think that's why a lot of people find things like ruins and things like that just so romantic and atmospheric. It's because there's nobody in them, they're empty, and you can imagine people there, but they're not actually there. And it's the way that it's just an incredible environment to be in. But yeah, obviously we are all character driven in a lot of ways, and as humans, that's how we are. But you know what? I just can't get enough of doing environments. I just love doing it and challenging myself to do different perspectives and things. So things like this. That was very much. It's quite an early one, is this? But it really was just. I'm going to do something that's got St Pancras Station in, and see if I can do the station and the ridiculous roof that's there, or roofs that are there. And then I'll put some characters in afterwards. I concentrated on doing the background and the train, and then I got some tracing paper and just started doodling characters and working out. And it was inspired by a what's he called, Frith or Firth? I can't remember now. A Victorian artist who did Paddington and King's Cross, I think. And there were loads of little characters in there and lots of things going on. But it was more, again, it was more the whole view and the environment that it was in that really sort of appealed to me. And then you could go in and look at different characters and get different compositions. So you could crop different areas and you would get different compositions and different things going on that were kind of separate to each other, but it was the whole environment that brought it all together and made it work. And I do like that, but doing so many characters is really time consuming. It takes a lot out of you.
Can I ask you, like, out of curiosity, what a piece like this one, how long roughly can take?
It was like a 14 days of painting, I think.
14 days, okay.
Yeah. It was a lot of drawing beforehand, and I did multiple drawings, gradually getting bigger and bigger and bigger, with more detail in. And then, even then, once I drew it on the watercolor paper, and I think it was it 80 centimeters in width, so it was quite big. For me, and then you have to draw it all over again. So it takes a lot, and you hope that you've done enough work behind it because it's so complicated. So you hope that you've done enough work with the drawing stage that once you get onto the watercolor, there's not that much that needs changing. But even then, all of this metalwork up in the roof, it wouldn't stand up in real life. You know, there'll be issues in there, but it just about you can look at it and be like, yeah, I can accept that. It looks like it could be that, and that's fine. So yeah, it was a long one, and most of the time I would take more like sort of 5, 6, maybe 7 days working on a finished piece of art, depending on how much detail there is and how big it is as well. So you know, you get the ones that are more like this. This was 30 by 30 centimeters, and that would have been about 5 or 6 days to paint. And what would have happened, what I did was, obviously you do the background and you just get this sky washed in, and then the hills, and a very basic kind of blocking of colours for this part of the grassy knoll. And once you're happy with that, you can then start picking out some of the more, not quite the individual blades of grass, but certainly the tufts, let's say, and then start blocking in the colours, maybe in underpainting. So picking out, say, like I can't remember what I did. I think I probably did a sepia underpainting for the characters, which just helps you to work out where the light is. And then start blocking the colour, the local colour on top of that. And obviously, because you got that underpainting, it influences the colour that goes on the top. And that's a really good way of just keeping everything, the whole composition in your mind without overpainting bits by accident, putting the wrong colour on certain bits. And then once you got to that stage, that's like 1 or 2 days in. And then you start putting the more sort of stronger colours in, working on the details. And you just work your way through it. You know, I probably started up here and then worked my way down. So I'd do one character, then another character, then another character, and I just keep going. And normally by the end of it, you've cracked it. You know exactly what colours and how to put them on and how much to put there. And the first character that you do takes forever, and then the last one you've done really, really quick. And then I put the highlights in at the end. So gouache highlights, that'll be whiskers, blades of grass, like these really light, well, not really light, but lighter blades of grass, and the edges, say down here on the hat. And then you're done. And that, it all kind of suddenly happens in the last day. You know, you'll go in and you'll be like, oh, I've got quite a lot to do. And then suddenly you finish the watercolor stage, you're like, I better do the gouache then. And then it's done in like a couple of hours. And you're like, oh, okay. That happened quicker than I was expecting. So yeah, it varies quite a lot, and it depends on what sort of reference you've got. You know, if you've got something, say like this, this is a personal piece, and this was done really quick. So yeah. I mean, it's really loose.
Yes, it's more. You can see it's more. It's wonderful as well. But knowing your style is like, this is clearly more loose than
yeah. And it was one of those that was it's quite small, I think, and I just wanted to have a go at painting this particular field that I really like. It's quite local to me, and it has great light in the evening. As you can see, the huge cast shadow here. Yeah. And then the light just breaking through in between the gaps in the trees. And so it was just a bit of a practice, really, just to see what I could do, playing around, maybe trying to show some of these dandelions and buttercups and things with a bit of masking fluid in the beginning and then a bit of gouache on top, and the same with this, the cow parsley, and getting the edges, sort of maintaining light edges, but against dark backgrounds, which is not very easy with watercolor, but keeping it soft at the same time. And that was, you know, it was done in like 2 to 3 days. I think I'd done it. And that was because I had really good reference as well. Yeah. What I actually did was I did a video. So I was walking through here with my family, and I was doing a video as we were walking through, and I was like, oh yeah, at some point I need to get a composition out of this because this is really nice. And then I found a still in the video that worked. And so I basically pretty much painted that and just tweaked it, just added this cow pasture here, added the characters, and just sorted a few little bits out that were sort of on the edge, like say up here, because it's not quite in the frame, but I know what's there because I've got the video as we move further away, so you can work it out. So it's if you've got good reference, you can do it much quicker. If you haven't got the reference, or if you're making it up like this, it takes a long time, and a lot of it is trying to find things as substitutes that help. So especially with characters, I bought a reindeer toy.
Toys, right? I was going to ask you about this. What's your approach? Because if I was making this, I will either go into 3D or to make a physical model, but I will need to make a picture of something in that perspective. But I don't know what's your approach. So you bought reindeer toys.
I bought reindeer toys for the perspective, working out just the different angles that you're seeing them at. Obviously, I couldn't move the legs or anything, so I had to study lots of photographs and work that out as well. And then with the sleigh, that was I built like a very basic. So I did a drawing, I did a plan, like a design of the sleigh from different angles, and then I printed that out and I just cut it out and stuck it together like a really, really basic paper model. So, there's no gaps here. It is just solid paper, but it does just help just a little bit to work out where some of the angles might be as I'm moving it around. And then with the houses, that's all, again, I did a basic plan of the village, because throughout the book for this, The Night Before Christmas, you see Santa Paws, as I like to call him, flying through the sky, different angles. So that at some point you see him from one of the windows in this house down here looking over the high street.
Oh, okay.
And then you'll see from the other side of this house as well, looking behind you. And then obviously this view. So I needed to work out where all these buildings were all positioned. So the only way I could do that was create a plan and then imagine how that would work. And I found a really helpful drone video of a colonial village in the US. I want to say Williamsburg. I can't remember if that's what it's called, but it was just this video that they uploaded. And it's like their living museum, they call it. And it just happened to have really good views of the tops of these roofs with the chimneys and what they all look like. Because you don't really think about it. You don't think, what does the top of a chimney look like? Because you only ever see it from street level. But obviously I needed to know. And that was really handy. So it was all of these different bits. And I have a few toys of different animals. I've got a toy of a polar bear as well. And I've also got a stuffed mouse in the studio. And things like that help a lot. And then when they're dressed, I dress myself and just get my wife to take photos of me. And maybe set the light up if we can. So if it's an interior, you've got a lamp, or, I'll go outside and take photographs. And when I was in my old house, the garden was quite small and very overlooked. So I'd be outside in a dressing gown, posing with a stick or whatever, a jacket and a hat. And people must have thought, what on earth is he doing? He's out again. He's gone out again. Look at this.
I will always tell my friends that you have like close friends. That they will be surprised if they get into a folder of mine where are all the pictures.
Yeah. Well, you have to delete them. Unless you know that you're going to use them, you gotta get rid of them. Because it's really embarrassing when you're trying to show somebody a photograph of something on your phone and you've got hundreds of photos of yourself. in these weird poses, pulling strange faces, and you're like, oh no, don't look at that. Hang on a second, just let me.
Yes, it's terrible.
I know.
I was going to ask you about that. I'm happy that you mentioned that because it's. I was going to ask you, like, if you are of those that take pictures of himself or someone else, or the one who spends hours looking in the internet to find something specific. But I can see that you are more of the acting one.
I prefer that, because you get exactly what you want then.
Yes.
But sometimes you have to go online, especially with animals. You do have to go online. Although I do have some books that help you with the anatomy. But the best thing to do is a mixture of everything. So if you've got photos from a zoo, which I've got a few of those, and then you've got photos that other people have taken that are online, and you've got a skeleton as well, that's really handy. Then you can sort of envisage how they would be upright, how they might be wearing clothes, and then you take photos of yourself hunched over, trying to have that similar sort of posture, because we've all got the same mammals. We've all got the same basic skeletal structure, so you can kind of get away with it, and then you just shorten some of the bones around the legs and get rid of the opposable thumbs. And you can get away with it, and you can make it work. But again, it wouldn't in real life. That animal would just hardly be able to walk. If they took what I'd drawn and it became real, it just wouldn't be able to cope. But it doesn't matter quite so much, because it is a leap of fantasy. It's this thing where it's animals in trousers. They're driving a car. It's all ridiculous. It doesn't matter too much. You can get away with a lot.
Wonderful. Well, Chris, yes, a last question, because I presume you have a lot of work to do, and I can, if you give me time, I can spend the whole day here because I love it. I mean, I will go through all your pieces and talk about them, but it's too much luxury. So, I would like just to finish the video. What advice would you give, like, to someone who maybe, I don't know, if a young kid, or maybe someone who is in his 50s, 60s, or maybe someone who is retired and thinks like, well, this drawing I like it, but I'm not. It's too late, right? Or for a young one who thinks this is too difficult, like a piece of advice that you will give to them, like, or to encourage them to get into this wonderful art, either it's watercolor or any other means that each one likes. I mean, in my case, I love pencil, and I do digital because it's quick, and I need to do things quick to get the money. But yeah, just for people to get into storytelling through illustration. What will you tell them?
Well, I generally say the same thing every time, and it is just draw and paint what inspires you. It's what is it that you like? What do you actually like? Don't worry about what you think you should be drawing. Don't worry about the mediums that you think you should be using. It is very much, who are the artists that you like? What kind of films do you like? What do you like outside you? What is it that you really, really enjoy? And then just draw that. It can be anything. Some people love cars, so just draw cars. Some people will just be like, oh, I love flowers, and they'll just paint and draw flowers. And if you do that, you're drawing something that is always going to have your attention, and therefore you're going to improve because you're going to do it a lot. You're going to not worry about what anybody else thinks about it. It's very much, I love this. So for me, I'm there, trees. I can draw and paint trees forever. And they're all different. So there's so much inspiration there for me. And then if I can use that and put it into illustration work. So then when you get professional, let's say you're thinking more professionally, you draw and you paint what made you want to become an illustrator. Again, it's that inspiration thing. And if you do that, you'll put your heart and soul into it and you will get better. It's much better to do things like that where you're enthused rather than create something that you think would look good in a portfolio and would appeal to an art director. It's got to be what you want to do. And then people will come to you. Like, so long as you're showing that artwork online, go to book fairs, art fairs, whatever, go and talk to people. But so long as it's work that is very much you, people will recognize that and they'll want that from you, and they'll say, can you create, some illustrations for me? Or I've got the perfect story that fits this style. And I think that's the best thing. And it took me a long while to get there, because as you've seen with some of the early work, I became known as the guy that could do other people's styles, other people's things. And that's what I thought I had to do to make a living. And it wasn't until later on that I realized, I should have just done what I really wanted to do, which was that sort of fantastical, whimsical artwork inspired by the British countryside. That's what I should have done. And I moved away from that, and I shouldn't have done. So yeah, you do what inspires you, what makes you want to do art. You concentrate on that, and you don't worry about what you think other people will want to see from you. You just do that, and you get really good at it. That's all I can say.
Wonderful, Chris. Well, thank you so much, because I think this is gonna end in 1 minute or two, or maybe 10 seconds. I don't know. So just to keep the record, thank you so much for.
No, thank you
for your time.
Thank you for inviting me. I've never done anything like this before, so yeah, it was really nice. Nice to catch up with you, Pedro, as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. We will catch up more. Cool. Now I leave you. I let you work a little.
Yeah, do some work.
Well, Chris, thank you so much. People will enjoy this a lot. So thank you.
I hope so. Thank you. Take care.
You too, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Enjoy Spain.
Yes, I will come.
Yeah, one day. Yeah. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.